Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this new webinar from the GVF webinar series in association with Connectivity Business News. My name is Vishal Patil and I'm a consultant at Euroconsult. For those who do not know about Euroconsult, Euroconsult is a well-known aerospace consulting company based in Paris and has presence all over the world. To know more about Euroconsult, please visit www.euroconsult-ec.com. I would also like to thank the sponsor of today's webinar, the creators of the new online training material for those in the space and satellite industry, Space Business Qualified. These courses are a great way to onboard new staff, broaden the knowledge of existing staff, and prepare staff for increased responsibilities. Additional information is at spacebq.org. Let me introduce our today's panelist. Today, we have with us Tim Southard, Vice President, Satellite Networks from Anuvu. Chris Insall, Head of Maritime Market Development from ST Engineering iDirect. Stephen Conley, Director, Platform Strategy and Marketing from Eutelsat. Will Mudge, Vice President, Engineering Operations from Speedcast, and Yaron Katriel, Product Line Manager from Gilat. Welcome, everyone. And before we start, just to give a kind of idea, as we all know that the use of connectivity in mobility market, especially maritime and aero in-flight connectivity, has gained momentum in the last decade or two. And now industry simply cannot ignore the importance of these markets. With addressable market, more than 60,000 aircraft, commercial and business, and around 200,000 commercial vessels, the mobility segment provides an ocean of opportunity. To explore more on some of these aspects, let's get started. To begin with, I think what is more relevant in today's world is to discuss a little bit about what has been the case for mobility segments. So to begin with, let me ask you a very fundamental question, which is more relevant in the post-pandemic world. What do you think is mobility smooth sailing and taking off? So why, Team, would you like to start?
Sure. So I would say that mobility is definitely taking off. After the pandemic, we saw substantial growth from people returning to the air and returning to sea, taking with them the skills that they learned in remote work and expecting that same at-home experience when they're traveling. So this has been a boon for our markets.
Okay, Chris.
Yes, I mean same comment really. So speaking just for maritime myself, yes, connectivity is certainly taking off. That's characterized by continued strong adoption of VSAT systems across all the maritime sub-verticals. Aside from cruise markets, yes, maritime connectivity was not heavily affected by COVID. And yes, we're up to between 30 and 40,000 VSATs on larger vessels at the moment, and probably tens of thousands of smaller VSATs on, say, fishing vessels. Those are sectors that have been highly dependent on L-band before, and now they can access the advantages of high performance on smaller VSATs. Entirely smooth sailing, I don't think so for end users, for all end users, because there have never before been so many industry developments around. So it's sometimes difficult for end users to understand clearly with all the announcements on the tremendous technologies of NGSO and multi-orbit, etc.
Right. Stephen?
Yeah, so I think it's not been smooth sailing. Certainly during the pandemic years, it's been pretty horrendous for the mobility industry in general. But we're definitely seeing crews come back. I mean, I think last year it was still less than 50% of the passengers from sort of pre-pandemic times. But this year, I think we're forecasting to get back to that pre-pandemic numbers from 2019. Similar in the sort of cargo shipping, we are sort of already the traffic is slightly ahead of pre-pandemic numbers already, if I understand well. On the airline side, we're all seeing that coming back. It's the ability to react to the demand has been difficult. Particularly for those airlines, everything's been a bit of a nightmare. If anybody's been traveling over the last several months, I'm sure you've run into some issues, but it's coming back to normal, and it feels like everything is good, and the revenues are coming back into those companies. So I think the demand is not, to Chris's point, I think the demand hasn't petered off at all. If anything, we've come back and realized that connectivity is pretty crucial to keep things going, to counter some of the effects of what we've seen. So I mean, it's not smooth sailing, but it's taking off.
Okay. Will, as Speedcast, do you have a different opinion on that?
I don't know that I have a different opinion, but I think the word taking off is interesting, right? I think it's a very exciting time for us. We're seeing a lot of change in the industry. Post-COVID, like I think everyone has commented on, we've seen the ramp back up of services where everyone's needing it. I think that's a good sign or indicator, but we're also seeing this time of change, right? Starlink has come on stage. We're seeing more and more integrations. We're seeing market expansion because of it, but it's a changing market for us. It's not going back to the way it was, right? It never will do that, not with something like Starlink, but I think Starlink has really added to the excitement. So when I see taking off, I want to just be clear. I don't think it's going back to the way it was. I think the market has changed a bit. I think we have this exciting new service, which we as satellite operators should all be excited about because of satellites commercializing that space, bringing these new great features to our customers, and we're seeing it getting adopted more and more. And that's great news for the industry in total, for our users at the end of the day. So how we're taking off maybe is a bit different vector than what you were intending the question to be, but certainly we're seeing the return and the ramp and everything else. And I think someone else said it too. Even during COVID, the criticality of services was still very high. So we still saw a lot of need for the services to be on, maybe just not at the same levels that we saw during pre-COVID times for the amount of bandwidth that they were choosing. But having connectivity while you had COVID at remote sites was very, very important.
Right. We'll touch upon that, and we'll come back to that point later. But before that, Yaron, as a part of Gilat, what was your experience post-COVID?
So I think, like my colleagues, I agree with them that we are taking off in terms of mobility connectivity. We see, on a personal level and also on business, although it is not like pre-pandemic, still people would like to travel. And from the pandemic, they understood that, although we need to plan, we need also to enjoy life. So tourist travel picked up. And also on business side, although we understood that we can teleconference and we don't have to do business travel, but still we need the face-to-face meeting in order to make an efficient business meetings. So definitely we see that after the pandemic, the demand is picking up. And as an equipment provider, we see the surge and the need. And also during the pandemic years, our customers took this opportunity to expand their network and to prepare to the time that after the pandemic.
Okay, great. So in short, it is taking off, I would say, to summarize in 2 words. And Will, you were just mentioning about cruise passengers, and you are one of the biggest cruise service providers. So I would like to ask you one question here is, how do you see, or how is satellite connectivity helping cruise ships, specifically, or cruise ship passengers, to gain back the confidence? Because what had happened in the past, we have seen that there was a shake in the confidence for most of the passengers, especially cruise travelers, or for that matter, even air travelers. So how do you think this satellite connectivity is helping to bring back that confidence on cruise ship travels?
Yeah, we may be mixing threads a bit, right? Because confidence with COVID on a site versus how communications can help it. What I can say on that is communications has grown on ships and customer sites more than ever, right? It becomes an enabler or something else that they almost expect as part of the service when they get on a ship. If they get stuck in a cabin because of sickness for whatever, then you're stuck on your connectivity streams. We've seen a big increase in the need for connectivity. I think my personal opinion is I think it does help customers to want to travel a bit more because they need to stay connected in many cases. And in some of our customers' cases, they've actually described the link as giving them more confidence, where it's not related to COVID in that case, but related to their architectures and how they go forward with how they plan their business. So I think it has a tie into it, but I don't think that's what's going to make a consumer decide whether or not they feel comfortable to go on a cruise at this point. But certainly, I think somebody else said it, Yaron. We're all pretty much over COVID, right? We're all ready to get out and have a little fun and enjoy some life. And we get the most enjoyment out of it when we can stay connected with the people that we love as we do it. And I think that's where it comes in.
Right, exactly. For team, is it kind of similar experience for, especially for Aero IFC travels, or is it something different? Because it was another market that was disturbed because of the COVID, right?
Sure. We did see a substantial uptick in upload from these aircraft as people were using different applications. The sort of mix of applications changed, and the expectation of people changed that the capabilities would be there. It's not okay to have gaps in coverage. It's not okay to have what I would call micro outages. These are not acceptable for the post-pandemic passenger. And this came at a good time where more capacity was finally coming on, and there was a gap sort of in production of large capacity satellites there for a period, but coming out of the pandemic, synchronized with sort of the launch of a good bit of new capacity that providers like us can take advantage of. And we needed this particularly on the upload and and because the typical passenger that was motivated to connect to the internet changed, and it grew. So someone who was not so technically savvy learned a little bit more during the pandemic how to navigate the Wi-Fi sign up, the systems to get them onboarded, sort of the friction to get them connected reduced. So with that, we see an increased take up, and you see this in the airlines with airlines beginning to change their commercial models to make it a little bit more attractive for people to get connected, and we have to provide the capacity that they need to meet that expectation.
Yes, certainly. I mean, what I understand is the pandemic played a role of catalyst in terms of connectivity for mobility market. But at the same time, so pandemic was one of the drivers as I would consider it, but there is an immense untapped market yet. There are many ships, those are not yet connected. There are many aircraft, those are not yet connected. So according to you, what would be other drivers that will help to tap these untapped markets?
Sure,
Maybe-
certainly. Yeah, certainly lowering the cost, getting some economy of scale associated with equipment is a big piece of this, bringing down those shipset costs. There's a lot of innovation that has gone into terminals that has allowed them to be more cost effective. And also just the sheer volume of capacity that is available in the price per bit. Dropping to a point where it becomes more practical is one thing, but also the novel partnerships that we see in service providers and operators working together to increase the penetration of connectivity, but also third parties. We see this sometimes in aviation where there are telecom companies, for example, getting involved in sponsoring or subsidizing some of the cost of this because they see the value that this brings to their brand, and that sort of helps everyone, the passenger and the airline and the service provider as well.
Okay, Stephen, from Eutelsat point of view, what do you think are the drivers?
In terms of innovation, I think from the satellite or operator perspective, it's been kind of evolving for many years. But the last decade, let's say, has seen a total change. So we've been doing mobility over satellite for a long time. So it started off with single beams and single satellites, and moving into different frequencies and different satellites, different baseband systems, and it's kind of been a slow progression over a long period of time. But in the last less than a decade, we've learned how to patch all this together and take advantage of all the innovations that are going on. So for me, I think the innovation that's most driving untapped markets is probably very high throughput capabilities from dense satellite high power beams on satellites that are at different orbital range. So you have different use cases for different needs. This enables the ground innovation, which can bring a smaller user terminal and access completely new markets from that perspective. And then it's the kind of software-driven aspect of being able to direct the most appropriate usage of the most appropriate system to the best use case. And all that orchestration of ground innovation, satellite innovation, and sort of delivering it as an overall end-to-end service is what's changed remarkably over the last few years, and where people are beginning to realize that satellite's not this cumbersome, messy, difficult thing. If it's packaged well by your provider, then it's incredibly reliable and efficient for mobility use case.
Right. At this point, we have a question from audience that I think more relevant, and we can take that now. So the question is, I'm just putting it up. So as per team of Anuvu, the demand from the airborne passenger have changed, but one of the drivers is certainly the type of service being provided by the air carrier. For example, before the pandemic, no streaming was allowed on board. Is that, or has that started to change?
Yes, I would say for the airlines that are requesting a CIR, they're seeing these numbers increase dramatically because they They see their competition begin to offer this, and certainly in the Americas, there is an expectation that the service be available for them there. This is still growing in Europe. I would say Europe is, for the most part, not expecting streaming just yet, but we are starting to hear a rumble of a requirement for streaming. But also these interactive applications where the customer is demanding more business applications. They want to be able to run their Oracle and Salesforce instances. They want their Office 365 to operate very seamlessly. And there is a sort of a higher focus on latency for those applications as well. So we're seeing streaming increase, but we're also seeing a higher demand for an increased availability and decreased latency.
Okay, and as this is, I mean, we have seen the point of view of satellite operator and as well as service providers, but I would like to also ask Yaron, what is your point of view on these drivers, basically? I mean, how an equipment manufacturer is helping to drive those demands?
Okay, so from our point of view, in order to to unlock untapped markets, is to help our customer, our service provider, providing them the maximum flexibility to address any need in any market, and to enable them to operate their operation at the simplest manner with the highest availability. And whether it is on airplane, whether it is on small ship and cruise ship, and I will give some example to what do I mean. For example, in terms of the flexibility, the ability to offer a wide range of portfolio, from modems to airplanes, to modem to small ships, and modem to cruise ships, each one supporting different types of data rates, from a few tens of megabits per second to solutions that provides multi-gigabit per second per single cruise ship. The ability to integrate to different types of antenna and different types of RFTs provide also flexibility. In terms of simplicity, the ability to provide a single box solution that provide all the required or the maximum functionality from a remote terminal, such as controlling the antenna, managing the RFT, providing different types of services, whether it is layer 2 or layer 3, and managing all the mobility and all the beam switching inside a single box, reduces the complexity and provide much easier way of operation. Also, seamless connectivity, the ability to perform switching, whether it is between beams on the same satellite, between different types of beams, or between different types of satellite, and even between different types of orbits, to do that in a seamless manner. Also a huge advantage, and provide the confidence in the service, and also the ability to roam between different types of operator. Although as one service provider do not have service coverage in a certain area, ability to roam between different types of operator enables to maintain the connectivity to their customer across different on a different operator. This is not something that futuristic. This is something that we are already doing with our customers, and we have deployed modems that can do support very high rates and with an easy of operation over different types of constellation, whether it is NGSO and GEO as well.
Okay, understood. Little bit, I mean, taking this discussion a little bit on different track, I would say one more interesting thing that we saw in the recent past, and it has been part and parcel of this industry, is the volatility that the industry has produced, or it has always been so volatile. We have seen a lot of mergers and acquisitions happening. We have seen some companies going through financial restructuring in the recent past. I would like to understand that why, according to you, this market is so volatile, and what are the essential steps that can be taken to make or to bring the required stability. Maybe Will, you would like to address this?
Yeah, I think the instability is driven by kind of the fundamental changes in the market, right? We have more capacity going up the sky. I think Tim mentioned it earlier, right? Our ability to convert megahertz to megabits, the price is coming down, which allows us to provide more to our customers at a reasonable rate. But I think really Starlink is kind of the bigger disruptor right now more than anything else, right? It really challenges all of us to look at our business models. You see major companies starting to take their corners and how they want to protect their business. You know, if you look at Hughes and Viasat, kind of a really direct impact from Starlink in that one, and how, you know, they're going to reshift their business to focus and make sure that they can have a plan to go forward. I think that kind of drives a lot of the fundamentals. And honestly, it's probably time, right? Having that disruptor to be able to come into the market and provide something so differentiating to our end customers and drive this from both a pricing perspective and a performance perspective is really, I think, kind of the core factor of what you're describing here on why do we see this consolidation happening within the market. It's because the market's changing.
Okay, Stephen?
Thanks, Vishal. Yeah, I think so. There's been some consolidation for quite a number of years, you know, but before you know, the Starlink noise came, even, and I think some of it very positive. So there's been some vertical integration. There's been some horizontal consolidation, and all for different reasons. I think it does give some uncertainty on the market. I think that the talk of, you know, such a large number of unproven players coming into the market and with really ambitious goals. You know, we've seen how many LEO propositions over the years, and that creates, you know, confusion in the market, I guess, and uncertainty. And so people are a little bit sheepish about making big investments. When it comes to, you know, what's really happened, so Starlink have come on, they've made a big noise, and then, you know, great for the industry, I think, in general, driving huge amounts of innovation across all levels of the value chain, and I think everybody's welcoming that. However, there's a difference with that model and the normal satellite operator model is the profitability factor, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Starlink's got a lot of a completely different investment case behind, whereas, you know, everybody else is relying on you know, profits to drive innovation, and that's where, you know, the likes of Eutelsat are doing, right. So we're investing our profitability in new LEO constellations, and, you know, trying to drive innovation in that respect. So it's definitely a difficult challenge to compete with that different level of investment, let's say. But, you know, I think it's great, as I say. I think there's room for everybody, and one of the other reasons is we've been talking about 10 years for oversupply of capacity. But quite honestly, I've not seen a situation yet where the demand, the supply is vastly outstripping the demand. It's just not happening. The demand is is greater than the supply will be even today or in 5 years, to be honest.
Okay. But does that mean that we will see more of those mergers and acquisitions or consolidations happening, maybe vertical or horizontal for that matter?
I mean, I think you'll see where it makes sense. So complementary solutions. So multi-orbit players coming together. So GEO and LEO, obviously makes sense. I think Eutelsat and OneWeb are already considering that option, and I think it's a complementary solution. I think you'll probably see it in other areas. But yeah, I mean, I think where it makes sense, I think everybody's got their different markets. You see some really taking a vertical focus and sort of complementing their services with more specific market expertise in further downstream. And where that makes sense, it makes sense. But at the satellite operator level, I think the obvious one is having a multi-constellation service and global connectivity and having the control and real raw visibility of all those networks from an owner economics perspective is going to be quite a game changer.
Okay. Chris, ST Engineering recently went through this merger acquisition, I would say. So
Yeah.
What is your take on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, just to echo what was said before, so the innovation that's coming in, there is a lot of M&A that's happened over the last 10 years, particularly at SP level. The innovation that's coming in, that's most welcome. The disruption isn't always welcome in terms of the flow of information, because it's not always clear to people what the offerings are. But yes, you ask about our case of ST Engineering. So yes, there was a major investment by the ST Engineering group in NewTek, which was realized a couple of years ago. This is a 250 million euro acquisition, and actually that has provided great opportunity, as we see it, to realize the strengths of a combined organization for our customer base. So what we term as the journey enabled system path towards next generation platform brings together advantages of different platform features, such as our bandwidth management, our global bandwidth management system, and beam switching systems, as well as the return link technologies that we have that were originally deployed in NewTek Dialog. Also, it is key in terms of scale in many cases. So when we look at our objectives for our new ground network strategy, and that includes some fundamental technologies like the integration of 5G, SD-WAN, and Edge, then it's clear that scale, the business scale, is needed to achieve these objectives in our case. So yes, some clear benefits from the investment in our case.
Great. So at this point of time, we have two questions from the audience, which are quite related to each other. So I would like to take those two questions. So first question is about, will the airplane connectivity be GEO, LEO, MEO, or switchable? That is one question. And another question is, will the flat phased array antenna will be the only choice for airplane connection? So I think these two questions are quite related if it's switchable. So in short, where the technology is today, whether we can manage this multi-orbit, multi-frequency solution. So I would like to know about where we stand with that respect today. Maybe Yaro, you would like to start with this?
Yeah, so definitely we see, service provider would like, and many satellite operator their view, they have multiple satellites, and now they might have also multiple constellation in multi-orbit. And for sure, we see that they would not like to manage this asset as each asset as a silo. They would like to manage all the fleet as a single unified network, where each terminal or each modem can connect to the best choice whenever it is located and based on its application. So definitely we see the need to operate on multiple orbits and on multiple satellites with the ability to have the optimization in real time for a modem to select the best connectivity of choice. And this is not only a need, and this is also a requirement that we see and develop and support it with our modems and their ability to switch and migrate between and to do seamless switching automatically between NGSO and also GEO.
Okay, Tim, your opinion on this?
Yeah, absolutely agree with Yaron. The R&D that we are focusing now in IFC is all about multi-orbit. We need to be able to switch from one constellation to another when the capacity is available. The demand is increasing so rapidly. I think if you had asked this panel 2 years ago, if Starlink had 4,000 satellites, would they have people on the ground complaining about contention, about not enough capacity? We would have said no. But here we are with Starlink having to increase prices in areas of high contention because there's just not enough capacity there. So as great as Starlink can be for our customers, we see that one operator by itself is not typically able to provide the capacity that's required in very high density areas. So we are going to use all of the arrows in our quiver for providing capacity in those very dense regions around busy airports, around special events and venues, in the maritime side, around ports and canals. There is such a spike of this demand in specific areas, and that's just one of the issues. There's also the radio regulatory issues, constellations that are not available in certain countries for certain reasons, geopolitical problems. You need to be able to switch from one to another based on all of that business logic, contention, radio regulatory, coverage, and capacity.
Right. So,
and I'm sorry, you asked about flat panels as well.
Yeah, flat panels for Aero, yeah.
Sure. So flat panels are definitely moving in the right direction, and we are a lot closer now than we were before to realizing that. We do anticipate that that mechanically steered antennas will continue to exist, and one function that we have prepared ourselves for is to be able to track and change from one satellite to another within a constellation using the legacy mechanically steered antennas, because even if you started today upgrading all of these aircraft, they're not going to be upgraded within 2 years, even 4 years. So this equipment is going to be on board the aircraft for a long time. And also the demand by the passengers to provide a low latency, high quality experience is going to be there. So we need to mesh those two together in a bridge to LEO for those legacy components. So this is a part of the strategy as well.
Okay, I think it's quite interesting because those new NGSO capacities coming in the market, bringing disruption altogether. But I also know at the same time that is lot is being discussed about NGSOs, and I think especially during the last GVF webinar on LEO terminals, this topic was also addressed there. But I think at the same time, everyone is super curious to hear about them more, talk about them more. I understand that, I mean, that most of us, we believe that there will be a certain direction that the mobility market will take. But can we say that this is going to be the ultimate direction that mobility market will take, whether it will be like multi-band, multi-orbit solution, or do you think that geo will still be leading the market, but NGSO will be complementary? I mean, if we can differentiate between that, I think, yeah, I mean, Will, what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think Leo is going to take the lead, right? I think anyone that thinks otherwise is probably fooling themselves. If you look at Royal Caribbean as an example, since SES isn't represented here, they replaced Geo with Leo, right? We see others doing something similar, right? They're all augmenting it. And, you know, if any of us attending this panel or in this panel would choose their home computer system to be able to run on a GeoLink or on a Starlink, we would all use the Starlink, right? I mean, I used it for this link for one of these sessions at one point, and you couldn't tell the difference, right? We all want that experience like this. But the reality is it can't replace everything, right? There are times, like Tim said, when it gets congested, there's no SLA that goes along with it. There's regulatory challenges with it too. So it's not a universal answer that it'll replace everything all at once at one time. There's a transition over to it, and how we help customers through that transition, and how do we put the right data down the right link, right? Starlink is an internet only service, right? There's no private links to it, right? When you look at cybersecurity and how do you manage that and corporate links, you're going to have to tie those two together. So like Tim said, it's not just about being able to switch between the right links. It's also about having the right data going down the right path at even the same time. So in our applications, we have LEOs running internet traffic, and we have corporate links going across geo links. So it's really a blend of the two on how they come together, but they will be a very big part in how we go forward.
Good point.
Right. And Stephen, because you have invested in OneWeb, so I think it's good to know your opinion on that. How do you see the market going forward?
Yeah, of course. Like the innovation at the lower Earth orbit is necessary, and it's got a longevity, and it's going to be around and bring great services. But at the same time, we're seeing still great things with geo. I mean, not everything is about latency, that is for sure. Latency is definitely impacting a number of applications, but it's not everything. The enterprise grade, high end services are quite often better placed over geo. And in our experience, one of our most recent assets, I guess, the first fully software driven beam-forming satellite that Eutelsat launched was Quantum, and that has been sold out since the beginning, and it's continued to provide fantastic high-quality services to mobility market on demand, changing beams, following fleets, and doing all these nice things. So, densification over the key the tropic regions is sometimes a problem for LEO for sure. I think there's the LEO, the ubiquity of in the northerly regions, and for if you take the example of cruise and explorer class cruises for LEO, I think it'll be great for a lot of use cases. But again, it comes down to there's no one thing that's going to win, I don't think. So I don't anticipate seeing geo become less relevant. To be honest, I think what we'll see is more modularity, a quicker time to market, more flexibility in terms of choosing your orbital slot while you're in orbit, reshaping the beams to cover the appropriate markets at the appropriate time. So I think there's more flexibility and ability to customize for a high-end dedicated service with GEO still.
Okay, Will, you want to mention something?
Yeah, I just want to build on what Stephen was saying too, right? As you combine the solutions, you really get the ideal scenario, right? KU is what, 99.5% availability for most of us. C-band, 99.8% availability. Terrestrial fiber, what, 99.59 essentially, and that's what kind of customers expect. So what's interesting now is being able to combine multiple systems, right? So if you get two 99.5 systems and you SD-WAN across both of them, like Tim was talking about, now the amount of time that those two align where they're not actually in service is very minimal, right? You still have rain fade that you have to contend with. Obviously, we can't get around physics. But when you look at a system's outage time, the likelihood that both teleports go down at the same time on the systems is very low. So you get to these much higher availability links based off of combining them together in that modular way, like Stephen was talking about. I think it is a really positive path for us.
Good. At this point, we have one question from the audience, which is on maritime, commercial maritime. So the question is, which geo regions are highly likely to adopt these new innovations in commercial market and why? So maybe Will, would you like to continue with it?
Yeah, just sorry to monopolize the time here, but right now it's regulatory. So where Starlink has approval to operate, like the Americas or in Europe, we're seeing them adopt the LEO. So I was in Norway 3 months ago and looking in the cruise harbor, and there goes a little ship across the harbor with the Starlink terminal on the top. Never would have had a satellite terminal, but you saw they kind of zip tied it to the ship, and there they went and had their terminal on it. So we're seeing regions adopt it where it's available because of the cost price points, and it kind of ties to somebody else's question here too. Sorry, Vishal, but because it's vertically integrated as Starlink, because OneWeb is vertically integrated right now too, we're seeing them add those on as a service as compared to trying to buy one antenna that does everything or one service that does everything. Again, you got to look at it like the Legos of how you bring this all together. Starlink is one Lego, but there's other ones that you typically need to be able to pull this together to an end solution.
Yep, and also, I mean, there's another question which is like exactly on what we are discussing here, multi-band, multi-orbit, and what direction the market will take. And one of the questions is, even though this is the market that we expect to take, but at this point of time, it's expensive. The solution is expensive, right? Not every single market would be interested in going for something like this. So, I mean, other than cruise market, do you think any other market would be interested in going for it? Or in that case, what needs to be done with respect to address the mass market with such kind of solutions?
So I'll take that one if you like. So yeah. I think definitely, yes, we'll probably see a different level of services across the different, GEO and LEO. I know from the sort of OneWeb perspective, there's not the same model of, very high entry into the premium maritime market. It's really got a price point for all ranges of all segments of maritime, and so we'll see that change over time, I think, and specific market segments will be reached at the appropriate price point as services start rolling out. So yeah, I don't think it's an exclusive access thing. Definitely not for us. The intent is to reduce the barrier and reduce the sort of, or increase the flexibility, let's say, without locking in long-term solutions and such like.
Yaron, as an equipment manufacturer, what is your take on this?
I think again, how to we need, in order to to address this, we need to manufacture or to provide lower cost terminal. And I think until now in the recent years, mobility were terminals, especially for maritime, were suffering from a higher complexity, which increased the overall cost of the terminal, multiple boxes and very complex operation. And the fact that it is possible to provide a product, a solution that is integrated as much as possible, that provides multiple functionalities in a single box, reduces the overall cost also in terms of CapEx, but also in terms of the overall operation. And this enables in overall to reduce the cost of and make the solution more competitive.
Okay, that's interesting because a lot is being talked about this, but actually it's important also to understand what are the steps those are required to take to reach that goal, right? And I think for me also one more point which is interesting is, as I believe as a customer or as an end user, I mean, everybody is looking for just like at home experience, even if they are cruising, even if they are traveling on board an aircraft, they just want to have just like at home experience. But at the same time, what we have seen, apart from some regions, I mean, it's still yet not there. And as I believe, and from our discussion, that all the steps that we are discussing would lead to eventually that particular experience. But there is always a gap, what we have seen, like what we experience at home and what we experience on mobility platforms. So apart from these points that we discussed, like what all things that needs to be done to provide this just like at home experience to mobility users, or to how to catch up with this race from land experience to like mobility experience. And I mean, what do you think? When can we reach to that level? How far out we are from providing that experience to the end users? Who would like to go first? Chris, yes, please.
Yeah, sure, Vishal. So, as you say, you know, there is expected that there would be a gap in terms of what you achieve with your home broadband experience, and that varies, of course, by country. You know, a lot of European countries jealous of what you can achieve in Singapore and Korea and Hong Kong. Yeah, I mean, in terms of what's achievable, you know, we can say from the technology we provide on our modems and networks, it's possible to deliver at 1.5 gigabits with our 5010 modem, for example. That's all subject to the flight capabilities. However, in reality, in the real world, there are lots of factors which need to be considered in terms of connecting to the vessel. And so that's down to the priority and budget of the customer. But for example, high burst performance, if you give high burst performance, for example, to the crew or to the vessel, that's great, but that's of limited value if the critical bridge systems are not performing totally reliably when you're in critical sailing areas, which might be congested, like the Dover Straits or the Straits of Malacca. So in that case, QoS, consistency, that is what's key. But yes, no question, maritime demand will continue to rise inexorably as it has done in terrestrial environments, particularly with fast-growing applications, growth areas like the cloud. So absolutely, projections of growth in demand of up to 10 times in the next 10 years. That's the case. That's what we see in maritime. But in practice, there are multiple dimensions or ways to consider.
Right. Team?
Sure, I would say there have been a number of strides in the technology and innovations that have increased the availability and certainly the capacity has increased. But in aviation, for example, if you're taking 6 to 10 seconds for a beam switch or a satellite switch, which an aircraft is going to do is it's going across in GEO and certainly in LEO, this is not going to be an at-home experience. You need to reduce that, as we've done with the dedicated space platform, bringing the latency on GEO down to its lowest, sort of sub 600 milliseconds, and beam switch time to sub 1 second, satellite switch time to sub 2 seconds. This is increasing the availability, which gets you a little closer, but bringing that latency down to an NGSO level, certainly at least a MEO, if not a LEO level, is really what's going to give that perception that all of the applications are more at home like. Because I know if I've got to approve 75 timesheets or forward and approve 50 invoices, click, 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 click. I want to be able to click an instant response, click, instant response, click, instant response. And even at these speeds that we're seeing on that, that's not something I'm going to want to do on a cruise ship or an aircraft unless that latency is at an NGSO level.
And from the equipment point of view, Yaron, what do you think? What is expected?
Yeah, again, I agree with him and the other guys that on airplanes there's still work to do. Although the equipment in terms of modems may support hundreds of megabits per second, still the overall system operation and the link budget influence the overall user experience. On the other hand, on the maritime, I think there is more room and there is more flexibility to provide the user experience, and therefore we see an ability to deploy a solution like what was mentioned, and also Gilat is doing that provide a multi-gigabit solution into the cruise ships with the ability to do seamless switchover with make before break, where the user is not experiencing any hiccup during a switchover between satellite and between beams. And there, it is more appropriate to say that it is like a home-like experience.
Right. We have last 2 minutes with us. So I think I would like to ask one last question to each one of you very briefly. What are the requirements according to you to provide utmost level of quality of service? Because that is what is the key parameter today. We see everybody is running behind providing the best quality of service. So according to you, what are the key elements to provide that best in class quality of service? So I think I'll start with Will. If you could quickly mention key.
So I think cost is always at the top, right? Because there's a very broad customer base that we need to consider. So quality is also somebody's perception about how much they paid for it versus the quality they get. We believe also it's multiple services, right? You can't rely on a single type of a service put together. And then you need a seamless way to bring those services together and deliver them to the customer. Those 3 things, and you're going to be set.
Yes, Stefan.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, it's bringing the service together, isn't it? It's the quality of service depends on what the customer tastes at the end of the day, how simple it is to use, how visible it is. You know, what do you see from what you bought Can you measure it well enough? Do you understand that it's doing, you're getting what you pay for? If you're comfortable that you're getting what you pay for, then you're happy with the system. But you're unlikely to get that from one single thing for all of the markets. So for sure, having an arsenal of various different solutions and a very, very smart software-defined way to put those things together and deliver them in the least painful way, that's going to be what keeps everybody happy.
Yes, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say QoS requirements, they're not universal. They're different and specific to different sub-markets. We do, of course, provide specific technologies for the management of QoS. That's absolutely core to what we do with global bandwidth management and our MXDMA MRC for return links. But what is key at the end of the day is consistency of delivery. So once that QoS level has been established, even when there's congestion, to maintain that and to have a full set of tools which enables you to control that and deliver your SLA to the customer.
Perfect. Tim.
Sure. Just to echo what we've heard from the others, diversity is a requirement in this. When you're dealing with radio, it's complicated, and having a diverse set of available capacities and the SD-WAN, the link bonding, the application enhancement that's required to route this properly and to the best location is what's going to be a winner for the customer.
Yes, and Yaron.
Yeah, I will join the others, and I would say adaptivity on any layer, adaptivity on the air interface, and the adaptivity on the bandwidth management, and adaptivity on the way the system operates in terms of diversity. So it's the overall quality of service is built by multiple layers of building blocks, where on each layer you deploy adaptivity and mechanism to ensure this high quality of service.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So diversity, adaptability, application, enhancement, cost, among various other aspects or other parameters to provide the best-in-class quality of service. So thank you so much, all of you, for being there and bringing in the value in this panel. Thank you so much. So this brings us to the conclusion of the webinar. The questions we did not answer or did not manage to answer during live program will be responded in writing and posted next to the video on GVF website if there are relevant topic of our discussion. You can watch the recording of this previous webinar of this and previous webinars on gvf.org. Please subscribe to YouTube channel @GVF for satellite. And please join us again for the next event, which is Antenna Innovations, the Next Generation, on 30th of March at the same time, 3 p.m. UK time or 10 a.m. Eastern. But daylight saving, do not forget about that. We will have our clock moved by then on both sides of the Atlantic. So no room for the error. Thank you so much for being there. Thank you, all of you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.